Experiment 1006 is one of the biggest mysteries in Poppy Playtime. Most people consider Huggy Wuggy to be this experiment, and they just think it's solved because of that. However, I don't think that's true, and I have some evidence that says otherwise. So, who is Experiment 1006 in Poppy Playtime? That's the question we're exploring today. Greetings gamers and welcome back to Top 10 Gaming. I'm Connor Monroe, and you seem to be loving the Poppy Playtime videos, so here's my Poppy Playtime theory. Are we Experiment 1006? Let's do it. Firstly, we need to ask, what is Experiment 1006? This experiment is first introduced to us by name in one of the death screens that we can see after we're killed by Huggy Wuggy. This screen says EXP.1006, isn't he wonderful? Before putting us back in the game. EXP in this case is referring to scenario, not experience points, unfortunately. The next time we hear a mention of this is actually at the end of the chapter in the final tape called Unknown, where the unnamed scientist says, final log in relation, Experiment 1006, the prototype. Coordination and cooperation is evidently within his skill set, as well as the skill set of all other experiments of his type. Though still missing, today's events are no doubt in relation to him. His absence was a flawed scientific process, which should have under no circumstances been left unaccounted for. That's why I'm making this log, so that the same mistake won't be made twice. Any future experiments will need to be contained and disposed of in a secure location. I'm not worried about myself. One breakthrough and I'll be back. We must forge onwards in the name of science. But for those who are beneath us, understand it or not. End note. And the final time we hear about this experiment is actually in the background text for the trailer of the game. This section, present at 43 seconds, says Experiment 1006, the prototype. He seems serviceable as the prime example for the type of vessel which we are trying to create. Despite his digestive tract being wired properly, the prototype finds no necessity for sustenance, unlike the others. All other experiments can survive while subsisting on much larger portions. Now, this is all well and good, but what does all that information actually tell us? Well, thanks to the trailer text, we know that whoever Experiment 1006 is, they looked like they could be the template for the other experiments going forward. Their naming system also seems to indicate that they were the 6th attempt at creating such a creature, as indicated by MapHat, which I guess makes sense. We also know that despite having a digestive tract, the experiment doesn't need to eat and doesn't seem to try and eat based on the wording of the actual phrase, saying finds no necessity for sustenance instead of just has no need for it. We also know that they went missing and at the time of the final log were still missing, and seems like they are able to cooperate and coordinate with others. And that this character, whoever it is seen as male, which removes Kissy Missy, the pink Huggy, and Poppy from the running. The reasonable assumption that Huggy is Experiment 1006 is thanks to the fact that he's the main antagonist of this chapter. However, there are a couple things that I'd like to point out. Mainly the fact that if this experiment went missing, and was still missing at the end of this log, as well as them wanting to dispose of and contain their other experiments like some weird SCP Foundation, how was he back come the start of the game? And how is he where they decided to seemingly store the other experiments, since this was supposed to be locked up securely? Considering how Poppy is here, and presumably the others are as well, this must be their version of the SCP containment zone, right? Because if it is, it makes no sense for Huggy to be here if he is Experiment 1006. It's also worth mentioning that Experiment 1006 is seen as the template for how they want to create their other creatures. And like, why would the one that seems to be absolutely kill crazy be their template? That just seems like a bad idea, unless that's what they intended. Plus, they said that this experiment isn't actively seeking sustenance and finds no necessity for it. But Huggy is actively trying to kill and eat us from what the death screen seems to indicate. So what's the deal there? And just as Experiment 1006 Isn't He Beautiful could be referring to Huggy, couldn't it also be referring to us as well? I mean, all the other death lines are about us in one way or another, so why would this one be any different? It just seems like they were hyping this experiment up so much that it can't reasonably be Huggy Wuggy, especially since that experiment had escaped. And who comes back after a while? Us. It also ties into the we are a toy theory that's been circulating on the internet, since if we are a toy, we could very well be Experiment 1006 that fled after we realized how messed up everything was, but eventually we came back when Poppy sent us a letter. Which, I mean, that's a whole other can of worms, right? Like, how would Poppy know to send us a letter specifically? Cause that's a whole other thing I didn't think of. I'm thinking of it as I'm reading the script. Hold on. What? How did Poppy know to send us a letter? That's sus. That's mega sus. As I said last time, Poppy is a sussy baka. Plus, these kinds of revelations are nothing new to the indie horror scene. A twist like You Are a Toy that was an experiment is honestly expected at this point, especially with the standards that FNAF has set in the indie world. And we know that this series draws inspiration from FNAF since it's made by Mob Studios, started by Enchanted Mob, who has made plenty of FNAF-based Minecraft animations, including the Disconnected series of original music videos, which I used to watch that a lot, actually. I used to watch it to try to gain inspiration for FNAF lists. But with such a heavy amount of content relying on FNAF, it's only natural for FNAF to be an inspiration in Poppy Playtime, as well as Bendy and the Ink Machine, which is something that many people seem to point out in the comments of top 10 scary Poppy Playtime theories when I talked about the possibility of them being in the same universe, which was only meant to be so I could include it in the thumbnail. So, because, you know, the people who watch the FNAF stuff would actually click on it at that point, but now that idea is actually seemingly stronger. There we have it, friends. Are we Experiment 1006? It seems so. Based on the wording of the references to the experiment, the fact that it went missing, and the fact that Huggy seems way too aggressive to be the ideal outcome, we must be the real Experiment 1006. What do you think? And do you have anything to add? Be sure you let me know down below. And speaking of comments, how about I respond to some from the previous Poppy Playtime videos? Mama Mangle said, what do you guys keep looking at off screen? You know, actually, there's a monitor here that shows me what the camera sees and how long we've been recording. So sometimes I check it to make sure that I'm not like cutting myself off on the sides of the frame, or like that the time is actually reasonable. I mostly look at it when I get to like number 5, because I want to make sure that the video is long enough but also not too long, since then everyone would force me to refilm it. So mostly I'm checking the time if I'm looking at this screen. And plus, I mean, like, who wouldn't want to look at this face, right? As much as they possibly could. Makes sense. Donna Jones said at 6:15, well, what about Bendy and the Ink Machine? Your character doesn't have a reflection in that game. This is true. However, the style of the game makes it so that there aren't really any reflective surfaces from what I remember, since you can't really see your reflection when everything is in the style of paper and ink. As well, there are theories that he is a monster, or that your player character, Henry, is a monster, and that none of this was real anyway. Plus, it's just a theory, dudes. Like, chill out, damn. This is one of the tamer comments that I saw too. Y'all are really getting all up in my grill about this. Death Mauler 181 said Dream Theory. LMAO, that reaction, I felt that. I think we all felt that. After what Dream Theory did to FNAF and the amount of just sheer rioting that was happening online and in the comments whenever I so much as allude to it, is even when talking about FNAF 4, which is literally a dream. Damn. It's like a Dream Theory quake happens whenever someone thinks about it. Nathan Govia Apollinar, I'm sorry I absolutely butchered that, I know, says, this sounds like Bendy mixed with something. Yeah, I know. A lot of people are saying this is more similar to Bendy and the Ink Machine than FNAF. And like, I agree, but I have to include FNAF somewhere in the video so that the video talks about it, and like, so I can compare the two, and like, cause you know, Poppy Playtime, it's not FNAF, so it would get killed by YouTube since it's not what we talk about normally, and cause you know, algorithm and stuff. Yeah. We're at the point where to get out of the FNAF algorithm, it's gonna be like World War III. So if I mention FNAF, I can include it in the tags and in the description, so people who actually come here for FNAF content will actually watch and see the video. So just like, let me do my thing, please, okay? Over 300 FNAF videos is a lot to undo. That's all the time we have for comments today. Thank you all so much for watching. I have been and shall remain Connor Monroe, and I'll see you in another video, unless Huggy Wuggy gets me first. Can't believe I'm threatened by a character named Huggy Wuggy.